The courthouse steps felt impossibly steep that morning, each one a mountain as I clutched the manila envelope so tightly my knuckles turned white. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The document inside weighed nothing physically, but it carried the burden of years of watching my future evaporate while Olivia built hers with what should have been mine. I remember standing there, my heart hammering against my ribs, wondering if I was making the biggest mistake of my life. Then my phone buzzed with the notification, Olivia Wilson and Bradley Scott's wedding day. Share your well wishes. My resolve hardened instantly. Some people deserved their perfect day interrupted. Some debts couldn't wait another sunrise to be collected. My name is Jessica Wilson. Most people call me Jess. And this is the story of how I lost everything, then found the courage to take it back. It started with a letter, a thin envelope from Westview University. Not the thick package I'd been dreaming of since I was 12. Just a single page that read, "We regret to inform you." I stood in our kitchen, the afternoon light filtering through lace curtains my mom was so proud of, as my entire future crumbled between my fingers. "It doesn't make sense," I whispered, more to myself than to my parents who hovered nearby. My grades, my extracurriculars, my essay, everything was perfect. Dad cleared his throat, that uncomfortable sound he always made before delivering bad news. "Sweetheart, there's something we need to tell you." That's when I learned the truth. The college fund my grandparents had set up for me when I was born, the one that had been my safety net, my guarantee, was empty. Every last penny, gone. "Where is it?" I asked, my voice unnaturally calm despite the storm building inside me. The silence that followed was deafening. Mom's eyes darted to Dad, then down to her hands. Dad suddenly found the pattern of our linoleum floor fascinating. "We had to make a choice," Mom finally said, her voice small. "Olivia's wedding is this year, and you know how important first impressions are in the Scott family. They're practically royalty in this town." My sister Olivia, 3 years older and infinitely more favored, had been dating Bradley Scott for 2 years. His family owned half the businesses in Riverdale, had their name on a wing of the hospital, and apparently required a wedding that cost the equivalent of my entire education. "You took my college fund. For Olivia's wedding?" The words tasted bitter, like copper pennies on my tongue. Dad straightened, finding his authority again. "It's a loan, Jess. We'll pay it back. The Scotts are connecting me with investors. For the business. Once that takes off, you'll have twice what was in that account." The business. Dad's eternal pipe dream. A sporting goods store that had been just about to take off since I was in kindergarten. My education sacrificed on the altar of his fantasy and Olivia's fairy tale. I didn't scream. I didn't throw things. Instead, I folded the rejection letter neatly, placed it in my pocket, and walked upstairs to my room. Through my window, I could see Olivia in the backyard, surrounded by wedding magazines, laughing into her phone. Probably talking to Bradley about flower arrangements or honeymoon destinations, all purchased with my future. That night, I called the financial aid office at Westview. The woman on the other end was sympathetic but clear. Without the expected family contribution or a cosigner for additional loans, my acceptance was rescinded. My spot given to someone on the wait list, someone whose family hadn't betrayed them. The next morning, I found a job at the local coffee shop. I worked double shifts, saved every penny, and applied to the community college 30 minutes away. It wasn't Westview, but it was something. A lifeline in the drowning current of my shattered plans. Olivia came home one evening while I was counting tips at the kitchen table. She breezed in, dropped a glossy shopping bag on the counter, and started chattering about wedding favors. When she noticed me, her smile faltered for just a moment. "Hey, college girl," she said, her old nickname for me now dripping with unintended irony. You should come dress shopping with us Saturday. You've always had good taste. I looked up from my small pile of bills and change. I can't. I have a double shift. On a Saturday? That's so depressing. Can't you call out? This is important. That's when something inside me snapped. Not loudly, but quietly, like a thread pulled too tight finally giving way. I met her eyes and said, "More important than my education?" Her face changed, surprise turning to discomfort, then defensiveness. "Is that what this attitude is about? Dad said you were being dramatic. It's just community college, Jess. You can transfer later." "With what money, Olivia? The fund is gone." She waved her hand dismissively. "Dad says his business is about to take off. The Scotts are connecting him with investors. Once the wedding happens, the wedding that's being paid for with my college fund." Olivia's expression hardened. "It's not like you owned that money, Jess. It belonged to Mom and Dad. They get to decide how to use it. It was a college fund. For college. Which is what I was going to use it for until— God, you are such a child sometimes," she interrupted, grabbing her bag from the counter. "This wedding isn't just about me. It's about all of us. The Scotts can change everything for this family, including your precious college dreams." She left me sitting there, staring at my pitiful earnings that wouldn't cover a single textbook. At Westview. That night I cried until my eyes burned and my throat felt raw, not just for the loss of my education, but for the realization that in my family's eyes, I was an afterthought. Collateral damage in their pursuit of status through my sister. The months that followed were a blur of work shifts, community college, classes, and the constant background noise of wedding preparations. Our house transformed into wedding headquarters, with sample centerpieces on every surface and guest lists taped to walls. I became a ghost in my own home, drifting through rooms where no one saw me, my voice unheard over discussions of seating arrangements and catering options. One day in late spring, I came home to find my bedroom invaded, wedding gifts piled on, my bed, boxes stacked against my walls. "We needed the space," Mom explained, not quite meeting my eyes. "The gifts were overtaking the living room, and you know how your dad feels about clutter. It's just temporary, until after the wedding." Temporary. Like the loss of my college fund, like my importance in this family. That night, I slept on the couch, surrounded by framed photos of Olivia on every surface. Her sweet 16, her high, school graduation, her engagement. The milestones of her life given prominence while mine were forgotten. I might have continued this way, working, studying, existing on the periphery, if not for Professor Diana Taylor. She taught my introduction to business law class at the community college, and for some reason, she noticed me. Really noticed me. "You're too bright for this place," she said after class one day, reviewing my latest paper. "Why aren't you at a 4-year university?" The question caught me off guard. I'd become so used to swallowing my story that sharing it felt strange, dangerous even. But something about her steadiness, her genuine interest, loosened the knot in my chest. So I told her about the college fund, the wedding, the family dynamics that made it all possible. As I spoke, her expression shifted from curiosity to concern, to something harder, something like righteous anger on my behalf. "What you're describing," she said carefully when I finished, "isn't just disappointing, Jessica. It's potentially illegal." I blinked at her, not comprehending. "What do you mean?" "If your grandparents established that fund specifically for your education, with legal documentation stating as much, then your parents may not have had the right to repurpose it, especially not for something like a sibling's wedding." The tear possibility had never occurred to me. In my family, questioning my parents' decisions was forbidden territory. Their word was law, their justifications beyond reproach. "I wouldn't even know where to start," I admitted. Professor Taylor's eyes lit up with a determination I would come to know well. Start by getting the facts. Do you have any documentation? About the fund? Anything your grandparents might have left regarding their intentions? I shook my head, then paused. My grandmother's hope chest. She left it to me when she died. I haven't looked through it since. But maybe there's something. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. That weekend, I pulled the old cedar chest from the back of my closet, now crowded with wedding decorations. Inside were the treasures of my grandmother's life, handkerchiefs embroidered with her initials, black and white photos in tarnished frames, and beneath it all, a folder labeled simply, Jessica's Future. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside was a legal document, not a simple savings account slip, but a formal trust agreement. As I read through the dense legal language, key phrases jumped out at me. Irrevocable Educational Trust. Sole benefit of Jessica Marie Wilson. Exclusively for undergraduate and graduate education expenses. The final page bore 3 signatures, my grandparents and a notary public's, dated 2 months after my birth. I took everything to Professor Taylor the following Monday. She reviewed the documents, her expression growing more certain with each page. "This is exactly what I thought," she said finally. "Your parents didn't have legal authority to use this money for anything other than your education. This was a formal trust, Jessica, not just a college savings account." "What does that mean?" I asked, a strange hope flickering in my chest. "It means you have legal recourse. You can sue to recover those funds, plus potential damages." The word sue hit me like a physical blow. Sue my own parents? My sister? The idea seemed impossible, a betrayal beyond imagining. Yet, hadn't they betrayed me first? "I need to think about this," I said, gathering the documents with shaking hands. Professor Taylor nodded. "Of course, but don't wait too long. There are statutes of limitations to consider." She introduced me to a former student of hers who now worked at Blackwell and Associates, a small but reputable law firm in the next town over. Marcus Chen was barely older than me, a recent law school graduate with kind eyes and a determination that matched Professor Taylor's. "Family financial cases are complex," he warned during our first meeting. "Emotionally, legally, in every way. Are you sure you want to pursue this?" I thought about my dwindling bank account, my cramped schedule of classes and double shifts, the wedding invitations that had gone out the week before, thick cream cardstock with gold foil, costing more than I made in a month. "I'm sure," I said. The next weeks were a whirlwind of legal consultations, affidavits, and hard decisions. Marcus worked mostly pro bono, charging me only for the filing fees which I scraped together from my tips. We decided on a civil suit for breach of fiduciary duty and conversion, legal terms that essentially meant my parents had violated their responsibility and misappropriated funds that weren't theirs to use. The hardest part was keeping it all secret. I still lived at home, still drifted through rooms filled with wedding preparations, still heard my sister's excited chatter about her approaching perfect day. Sometimes I almost weakened, almost convinced myself that family peace was worth my sacrifice. Then I'd catch a glimpse of my future slipping further away. Another semester I couldn't afford at Westview. Another opportunity lost. Another reminder that in my family's hierarchy of needs, mine came last. The final straw came 3 weeks before the wedding. I overheard my parents in the kitchen, voices low but distinct. "The venue called," Mom said. "They need the final payment by Friday." Dad sighed heavily. "It's fine. I'll move some things around." "Robert, we're already maxed out. The caterer, the flowers, everything's costing more than we budgeted." There was a long pause before Dad spoke again. "What about Jess's car fund? She won't need it right away, and we can replace it after the wedding." My car fund, the small amount I'd been saving since I was 16, working summers and weekends. Not much, but it was mine, earned with my sweat and time. And they were discussing taking it as casually as borrowing a cup of sugar. I stepped into the kitchen doorway. No. They both startled, turning to me with guilty expressions that quickly morphed to defensiveness. Jessica, this is a private conversation, Mom said, her voice taking on the sharp edge it always did when she felt challenged. About my money, I replied, surprised by my own steadiness. Again. Dad straightened, authority settling over him like a familiar coat. Sometimes families need to make sacrifices for each other. Your sister— Stop. The word came out louder than I intended. Just stop. Olivia's wedding has already cost me my education. It's not taking my car fund, too. Mom's face hardened. Don't be dramatic. You're still getting an education. At community college, not Westview, where I earned a spot. And you'll transfer later, Dad insisted. Once things settle down. I laughed, a hollow sound that seemed to echo in the kitchen. With what money? The trust fund that Grandma and Grandpa set up for my education, specifically for my education, is gone. Spent on centerpieces and catering and Olivia's perfect day. Their expressions shifted almost imperceptibly. Something like surprise, then worry, crossing their features. What do you mean specifically? Dad asked, his voice carefully controlled. I met his gaze steadily. I found the trust agreement. I know what you did wasn't just unfair. It was illegal. The silence that followed was deafening. Then Mom spoke, her voice trembling slightly. Jessica Marie Wilson, I don't know what you think you know, but you will not speak to us this way. We are your parents. And I am your daughter, I replied, my voice breaking slightly. But that didn't matter when you chose Olivia's wedding over my future. I turned and walked away, my decision crystallizing with each step. The next day, I withdrew the remaining balance from my car fund and moved into a tiny studio apartment near campus. It was barely more than a room, but it was mine, safe from their reach. The wedding day dawned bright and clear, the kind of perfect early summer day that photographers dream of. Social media lit up with preparations, Olivia getting her hair done, Mom fussing with floral arrangements, the venue gleaming in the morning light. I dressed carefully that morning. Not in the blush pink bridesmaid dress hanging in what used to be my closet, but in a simple navy suit I'd found at a secondhand store. Professional. Dignified. The outfit of someone who knew her worth. Marcus met me at the courthouse. Papers. In hand. Last chance to change your mind, he said gently. I looked down at the documents that declared my right to my own future. The legal proof that what had been done to me was wrong. I'm ready, I said. Pinecrest Gardens was transformed for the occasion. White chairs in perfect rows, roses and peonies cascading from arbors, champagne flowing freely. I parked across the street, watching guests arrive in their finery, bearing gifts and well wishes. No one noticed me at first. I was just another figure in the background, moving through the crowd. It wasn't until I approached the mother of the bride, my mother, that heads began to turn. Jessica? Mom's smile froze, her eyes darting to my outfit, so distinctly not the bridesmaid dress she'd expected. Where have you been? The ceremony? Starts in 20 minutes. You need to change. I didn't answer. Instead, I handed her the envelope. Her name and my father's printed clearly on the front. What is this? She asked, confusion replacing her forced smile. It's a summons, I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. You're being sued for breach of fiduciary duty and conversion of funds from an irrevocable educational trust established by Grandma and Grandpa. Her face drained of color. Around us, conversation stuttered to a halt as guests began to notice. Something was wrong. Jessica, this isn't the time or place, she began, her voice a desperate whisper. It's exactly the time and place, I cut in. The funds you illegally took from me are paying for this day. My future converted into flour. Arrangements and champagne towers. Dad appeared beside her, his expression thunderous. What do you think you're doing? I met his gaze steadily. Something I should have done months ago. Standing up for myself. I turned to leave, my message delivered, but Olivia's voice stopped me. She stood a few feet away in her wedding gown, eyes wide with shock and growing anger. You would ruin my wedding day over money? She hissed. What kind of sister are you? The question hung in the air between us, heavy with years of imbalance, of her needs always outweighing mine. For the first time, I saw our dynamic clearly, not as the natural order of things, but as something profoundly broken. I'm the kind of sister who deserved better, I said simply, from all of you. Then I walked away, straight-backed and certain, leaving chaos erupting behind me. As I reached my car, I heard someone call my name. I turned to see Bradley Scott, Olivia's fiancé, jogging after me. Jessica, wait, he said, slightly out of breath. What just happened back there? What summons? I studied him, wondering how much he knew, whether he was complicit or just another player in my family's drama. My parents took my college fund to pay for your wedding, I said bluntly. A fund that was legally mine. I'm suing to get it back. His expression shifted from confusion to shock. Your college? I thought Robert said the wedding was being paid for by their savings and his business investors. Is that what they told you? I laughed bitterly. There are no investors, Bradley. There never were. Just my education, sacrificed for flower arrangements and champagne. He ran a hand through his carefully styled hair, visibly processing. I had no idea, he said finally. Olivia never mentioned. Would it have mattered if she had? I asked. He didn't answer, which was answer enough. I got in my car and drove away, leaving behind the perfect day my future had purchased. As I merged onto the highway, my phone exploded with notifications. Missed. Calls from my parents, texts from extended family, social media alerts showing chaos erupting at what should have been the event of the season. I silenced them all. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. The drive back to my studio apartment felt surreal. My hands trembled on the steering wheel, and the full weight of what I'd just done kept hitting me in waves. I'd served my parents with legal papers at Olivia's wedding. I'd publicly declared war on my family. There was no going back now. When I pulled into the parking lot of my building, I saw Marcus's car already waiting. He'd insisted on meeting me afterward, worried about the emotional fallout. As I approached, he rolled down his window, his expression half concerned, half impressed. You actually did it, he said, almost in disbelief. I did. My voice sounded strange to my own ears, stronger somehow, despite the tremor running through my body. How do you feel? I considered the question as we walked up the narrow staircase to my apartment. Terrified, relieved, powerful, heartbroken, all of it at once. My phone hadn't stopped buzzing since I'd left Pinecrest Gardens. I turned it off completely as we entered my tiny studio, the space barely big enough for a bed, desk, and mini fridge. Marcus perched awkwardly on my desk chair while I sank onto the edge of my bed. What happens now? I asked. Legally? They'll have 21 days to respond to the summons. They can either contest it or try to settle. And realistically? He sighed, running a hand through his dark hair. Realistically, all hell breaks loose before then. Family lawsuits are never just about the law, Jess. You've ignited a powder keg. As if on cue, a sharp knock rattled my door. We both froze, exchanging alarmed glances. The knocking continued, more insistent. Jessica Marie Wilson! My father's voice, tight with barely controlled rage. Open this door right now. Marcus stood, positioning himself between me and the door. "You don't have to talk to them," he said quietly. "Not without me present." But I was already moving toward the door. Some part of me had been waiting for this confrontation my entire life. I unlocked the deadbolt and pulled the door open, revealing both my parents in their wedding finery, faces flushed with anger and the exertion of climbing the stairs. "How could you?" Mom hissed, pushing past me into the apartment. "How could you humiliate us like that? On today of all days?" Dad followed, his jaw clenched so tight I could see a muscle twitching. His eyes landed on Marcus, narrowing dangerously. "Who the hell are you?" "Marcus Chen, Ms. Wilson's attorney," he replied calmly, extending a hand that Dad pointedly ignored. "You're suing us?" Mom's voice cracked with disbelief. "Your own parents?" "Yes." The simplicity of my answer seemed to inflame her further. "After everything we've done for you, what exactly have you done for me?" I interrupted, a lifetime of suppressed anger suddenly finding its voice. "Besides take what was rightfully mine and give it to Olivia? Besides make me feel like I mattered less every single day of my life? We gave you a home, clothes, food," Dad started. "The bare minimum required by law," Marcus interjected, his professional tone a stark contrast to the emotional chaos swirling around us. "But not the educational trust that your parents legally established for Jessica's benefit alone." Dad rounded on him. "This is a family matter." "It's a legal matter," Marcus corrected. "The moment you misappropriated funds from an irrevocable trust, it became a legal matter." Mom collapsed onto my desk chair, the fight suddenly draining. From her. "Do you have any idea what you've done? The Scotts, the guests? Everyone saw. Bradley's parents are furious." "Good," I said, surprising even myself with the venom in my voice. "Now they know exactly who they're dealing with. People who would steal from their own daughter." Dad took a menacing step toward me. "You ungrateful little—" "That's enough. Mr. Wilson." Marcus moved smoothly between us. "I'd advise against making threats or inflammatory statements. It won't help your position in court." "Court." Mom whispered the word like it was profane. "You would drag your family into court?" "You dragged me into this when you emptied my college fund," I replied, steadier now. "I'm just following through." Dad's expression hardened into something I'd never seen before, or perhaps never allowed myself to see. Pure, undisguised contempt. "You've always been like this," he said coldly. "Always thinking you're better than us, smarter, more deserving. But you know what, Jessica? You're just selfish. Olivia understands family loyalty. Olivia understands sacrifice. Olivia has never had to sacrifice anything," I shot back, "especially not for me." The truth of that statement hung in the air between us, undeniable even in their anger. For a long moment, no one spoke. Finally, Mom stood, straightening her wedding outfit with trembling hands. "We should get back. The guests, the wedding's ruined anyway," Dad cut in bitterly. "Thanks to her." "No," I said quietly. "Thanks to you. For thinking you could steal my future and I'd just accept it." They left without another word, the door closing behind them with a finality that echoed in my chest. As their footsteps faded down the stairs, I sank onto my bed, the adrenaline that had carried me through the day finally deserting me. Marcus sat beside me, silent for a moment. "For what it's worth," he finally said, "I think you did the right thing." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. "Get some rest," he advised, standing to leave. "Tomorrow we start building your case in earnest." After he left, I lay on my bed in the fading light, staring at the water stain on my ceiling. I had done it. Taken the irrevocable step, burned the bridge behind me. It should have felt like victory. Instead, it felt like loss. The final acknowledgement that the loving family I'd always hoped for had never really existed. My phone remained off that night and the next morning. I couldn't face the messages, the judgment, the family drama unfolding in real time. Instead, I went to my early shift at the coffee shop, mechanical in my movements, making lattes and taking orders on autopilot. Until Bradley Scott walked in. He looked different than he had at the wedding, rumpled, tired, his usual polished appearance frayed at the edges. When he spotted me behind the counter, he hesitated, then approached slowly. "Can we talk?" he asked, his voice low enough that my coworker couldn't hear. I glanced at the clock. "I have a break in 20 minutes. He nodded and took a seat. By the window, ordered nothing, just stared out at the parking lot. When my break came, I joined him reluctantly, sliding into the chair across from him. "Shouldn't you be on your honeymoon?" I asked. He gave a humorless laugh. "The wedding didn't exactly happen. After you left, it was chaos." Olivia was hysterical. Your parents were trying to explain while also demanding everyone pretend nothing had happened. My parents were mortified. "I'm sorry for you," I said, surprised to find I meant it. But not for what I did. Bradley studied me, as if seeing me clearly for the first time. "I had no idea about your college fund. When your dad approached my family about investing in his business, he never mentioned where the wedding money was coming from. Would it have mattered?" He considered this, then shook his head slowly. "Probably not. To be honest, I never thought much about you at all, Jess. You were just Olivia's quiet little sister." The frank admission stung, even though it shouldn't have surprised me. That's all I'd ever been to anyone in Olivia's orbit. An afterthought, a shadow. "Why are you here, Bradley?" I asked tiredly. He leaned forward, suddenly intense. "Because I need to understand. The Jess I thought I knew would never have done what you did yesterday. She would have stayed quiet, accommodated everyone else, disappeared into the background. That Jess got tired of disappearing." He nodded slowly. "I can see that now." He hesitated, then pulled an envelope from his jacket pocket and slid it across the table. "This is for you." I eyed it suspiciously. "What is it?" "Open it." Inside was a cashier's check made out to me for $25,000. I stared at it, then at him, bewildered. "What is this?" "Part of what's owed to you," he said simply. "My family can afford it. Yours clearly can't or won't pay you back. Consider it a down payment." I pushed the check back toward him. "I don't want your money, Bradley." "It's not about what you want," he replied, an edge entering his voice. "It's about what's right. I'm not comfortable starting a marriage built on stolen." "Winsko, starting a marriage? You're still going to marry Olivia? After all this?" He had the grace to look uncomfortable. "We're working through it. The wedding's postponed, not canceled." I shook my head, a bitter laugh escaping me. "Of course, the show must go on." "Jess, keep your money," I said, standing abruptly. "This isn't about $25,000. It's about what they did, and about making it right through proper channels. Through the courts." "The courts will take months, maybe years," he argued. "This could help you now. Get back to Westview for fall semester." The mention of Westview sent a pang through my chest, the dream that still felt impossibly distant. "Why do you care?" He didn't answer immediately, seemingly wrestling with something internal. Finally, he said, "Because I'm partly responsible. I saw the way your family treated you, the way Olivia talked about you. I never said anything, never intervened. I was so focused on the connections, the perfect match, that I ignored what was happening right in front of me." It was perhaps the most honest thing anyone connected to my family had ever said to me. I sat back down slowly. "I can't take your money," I repeated, more gently this time. "But thank you for offering." He nodded, retrieving the check. "For what it's worth, I think you did a brave thing yesterday. Misguided timing, maybe, but brave. Brave or reckless? I asked with a faint smile. Sometimes they're the same thing. He stood to leave, then paused. Oh, one more thing. Your parents are telling everyone you made the whole thing up, that there was no trust, no legal claim. My stomach twisted. Of course they are. Do you have proof? Beyond the trust document itself? I thought of the folder from my grandmother's hope chest. I think so. Why? Because they're gathering forces, Jess. The family is closing ranks. His expression was grim. And Olivia is out for blood. After Bradley left, I finished my shift in a daze, his warning echoing in my mind. That evening, I finally turned my phone back on. It immediately exploded with notifications, missed calls, voicemails, text messages, social media alerts. As I scrolled through them, my blood ran cold. A Facebook post from my cousin Diane. Some people will do anything for attention, even ruin their sister's wedding with false accusations. Sending love to Olivia and Aunt Karen during this difficult time. A text from my Uncle Richard. Your grandmother would be ashamed of you, making up lies about a trust that never existed. Voicemails from distant relatives I barely knew, all variations on the same theme. I was a liar, a drama queen, a jealous sister who couldn't stand seeing Olivia happy. The family story was solidifying. There had never been a college fund, specifically for me, never a trust, never a legal obligation, just a selfish, entitled daughter making trouble. I called Marcus immediately, my voice shaking as I explained what was happening. It's not unexpected, he said calmly. They're trying to control the narrative, but it doesn't change the legal reality. What if they destroy the trust document? I asked, panic rising. What if they claim it's a forgery? We already filed a copy with the court, he reminded me. But we should secure all the evidence. We can. Is there anything else that might corroborate the trust's existence? Bank statements, letters, photos? I thought hard, trying to remember anything that might help. My grandmother kept journals. I never read them. It felt too private, but they might mention the trust. Where are they? At the house, in her hope chest with everything else. There was a long pause. You need to get them, Jess. As soon as possible. The thought of going back to my parents' house made my stomach clench. They won't let me in. Then we need to be creative. Is there a time when you know they'll be out? I checked the date on my phone, a realization dawning. Thursday. Mom has her hair appointment at 2, and Dad has his standing golf game with the Rotary Club. Perfect. I'll go with you. No, I said, surprising myself with my certainty. I need to do this alone. Thursday arrived with leaden skies and a threat of rain that matched my mood. I parked a block away from my parents' house and approached on foot, heart hammering against my ribs. The spare key was still where it had always been, tucked into a fake rock beside the hydrangea bush. The house felt different now, not the home of my childhood, but a hostile territory I was invading. I moved quickly through the familiar rooms, noting the evidence of my erasure. Photos of me had been removed from the walls, my achievements no longer displayed on the refrigerator. It was as if they were trying to excise me from family history. I headed straight for my old bedroom, now little more than a storage space. The hope chest had been pushed into a corner, partially hidden beneath boxes of wedding gifts that had presumably been returned or were waiting to be returned. I dragged it out and lifted the heavy lid. The trust document was gone, as expected, since I'd taken it to Marcus. But the rest remained. My grandmother's journals, photographs, letters. I gathered everything that looked relevant, stuffing it into my backpack. As I was about to close the chest, something caught my eye. A small, leather-bound book I hadn't noticed before, tucked into a hidden compartment in the lid. It was older than the other journals, the pages yellowed with age. When I opened it, A slip of paper fluttered out. A receipt from the bank where the trust had been established, dated 2 days after my birth. And beneath it, in my grandmother's elegant handwriting, were the words that brought tears to my eyes. Establish the educational trust for Jessica today. Robert and Karen don't quite understand why I'm being so formal about it, but I've seen how these things go in families. Jessica deserves to have her future protected, especially with her sister already commanding so much attention. My beautiful, quiet granddaughter will have her chance to shine, no matter what. It was the validation I had always craved, written in my grandmother's own hand. She had seen the family dynamics even then, had tried to protect me from what she feared might happen. I clutched the journal to my chest, tears streaming down my face. That's when I heard the front door open. I froze, terror washing over me. Footsteps moved through the house, too heavy to be my mother's, my father, home early. "Hello?" His voice called out. "Is someone here?" I shoved the journal into my backpack and zipped it closed as quietly as possible. There was no way out, except past him. I would have to face this head on. I stepped into the hallway, backpack clutched to my chest. Dad stood at the bottom of the stairs, his expression cycling rapidly from surprise to anger to something harder. "What are you doing?" "In my house?" he demanded. "Getting what's mine?" I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. His eyes fixed on my backpack. "What did you take?" "Grandma's journals, letters, things she left for me." He started up the stairs, hand outstretched. "Give me the bag, Jessica." I backed away. "No. That's family property. Like my college fund was family property?" I shot back, anger overriding my fear. "No, Dad. These are mine. Grandma left them to me, just like she left the educational trust to me." His face darkened. There was no trust, just a college fund, which we had every right to repurpose. We both know that's a lie. I pulled out the journal I'd just found, holding it up. And now I have proof, in Grandma's own words. He lunged for the journal. I dodged, but in the narrow hallway there was nowhere to go. His hand closed around my wrist, squeezing hard enough to make me gasp. "You're not taking anything else from this family," he growled. "Let go of me." I twisted, trying to break his grip. We struggled, a horrible parody of the roughhousing we'd done when I was a child. Back then, he'd always let me win. Now his fingers dug into my skin with bruising force. I twisted harder and lost my balance, stumbling against the wall. My head hit the corner of a picture frame with a sharp crack. Pain exploded behind my eyes, and I felt something warm trickle down my temple. Dad released me immediately, his face draining of color. "Jess." I touched my fingertips to my temple. They came away red with blood. "My God," he whispered, reaching toward me. "I didn't mean—" I flinched away from him, clutching my backpack with one hand and pressing the other to my bleeding head. Without a word, I pushed past him and ran down the stairs, through the front door, into the gathering rain. Behind me, I heard him calling my name, but I didn't stop, didn't look back. I ran until my lungs burned, until the rain had soaked through my clothes and washed the blood from my face. When I finally slowed, I was blocks away, my phone buzzing, insistently in my pocket. It was Marcus. "Jess? Where are you? What happened?" "I got the journals," I said, my voice shaking with cold and adrenaline. "And more, but Dad came home, and—" I broke off, unable to articulate what had just happened between my father and me. "Are you hurt?" Marcus's voice sharpened with concern. "Just a cut. I'm fine." "Where are you? I'm coming to get you." I gave him the cross streets, then sank onto a bus stop bench to wait, rain pelting my face and mixing with tears I hadn't realized I was crying. My phone buzzed again. My father calling. I declined it, then watched as text messages began to appear. Jessica, I'm so sorry. Please come back so we can talk. It was an accident. You know I would never hurt you deliberately. Please call me back. I'm worried about you. I turned off my phone just as Marcus's car pulled up to the curb. He jumped out, alarm crossing his features when he saw my bloodied temple. Jesus, Jess, what happened? He asked, guiding me into the passenger seat. We struggled over the journal. I hit my head on a picture frame. I stared straight ahead through the windshield, watching rain streak the glass. He didn't mean to hurt me, but he did. Marcus's expression hardened. This changes things. How? Personal injury during an attempt to secure evidence? That's a whole different legal territory. He started the car, wiping fog from the windows. We need to document your injury, file a police report. No, I interrupted. No police. Jess, he's still my father. The words tasted strange on my tongue, both true and false simultaneously. I won't press charges. That's not what this is about. Marcus looked like he wanted to argue, but instead nodded reluctantly. Let's at least get that cut looked at. At the urgent care clinic, a nurse cleaned and bandaged my temple, asking pointed questions about how I'd been injured. I stuck to the truth, partially. I was getting some things from my parents' house. My dad and I argued. I fell and hit my head on a picture frame. She didn't look convinced but didn't push further. The cut isn't deep enough for stitches, but head injuries can be serious. Any dizziness, nausea, vision changes? I shook my head, wincing at the movement. Take it easy for a few days, she advised. And if any symptoms develop, come back immediately. Back at my apartment, Marcus helped me spread the journals and papers across my small desk. We worked in silence, reading through decades of my grandmother's thoughts and observations. The picture that emerged was crystal clear. My grandmother had always seen the inequality in how I was treated. The trust had been her attempt to level the playing field, to ensure I would have opportunities regardless of family dynamics. This is exactly what we needed, Marcus said, carefully organizing the most relevant entries. Your grandmother's contemporaneous documentation of establishing the trust, her concerns about your treatment in the family, even notes about checking the trust's status over the years. I nodded, touching the bandage on my temple gingerly. What now? Now we have leverage. His eyes met mine, serious but determined. We file for an emergency injunction to freeze any remaining funds, submit these journals as evidence, and press for a quick resolution. And if they still fight it, then we're ready. He gathered the documents, placing them carefully in his briefcase. But based on what happened today, I think they might be more willing to settle. After he left, I sat alone in my tiny apartment, the reality of everything that had happened washing over me. I had survived being erased, being betrayed, even being physically harmed. Yet somehow, I was still standing, still fighting. For the first time since this all began, I allowed myself to imagine a future where I won, where I reclaimed not just my education fund, but my dignity, my worth, my place in the world. My phone buzzed again. Against my better judgment, I turned it on. 27 missed calls, mostly from my parents. But the most recent message wasn't from them. It was from my sister. We need to talk, Olivia had written. Just you and me. No lawyers, no parents. Tomorrow noon at Riverside Park, please come. I stared at the message for a long time, debating whether to respond. Finally, I typed a single word and hit send. Why? Her response came immediately. Because some things can't be fixed with lawsuits. Please, Jess. One conversation. That's all I'm asking. Against all reason, I found myself typing, I'll be there. Riverside Park was nearly empty when I arrived, 15 minutes early to scope out the meeting place. The unseasonable chill had kept most people away, leaving only a few determined joggers and an elderly man feeding pigeons near the fountain. I chose a bench with clear sightlines in all directions, unwilling to be caught off guard. The cut on my temple had formed a small scab overnight, tender to the touch but no longer requiring the bulky bandage. Still, the memory of how I'd gotten it lingered like a bruise beneath the skin. I'd spent the morning debating whether to even show up, exchanging a dozen texts with Marcus, who thought meeting Olivia alone was a terrible idea. "It could compromise your case," he'd warned. "Anything you say could be twisted and used against you." "I'll be careful," I'd promised, "but I need to do this." What I couldn't explain to him, what I could barely admit to myself, was that beneath my anger and sense of justice was a thin, persistent thread of hope. Hope that Olivia, the sister I'd grown up with, might finally see me. Not as competition, not as an afterthought, but as someone who deserved the same chances she'd been given. I spotted her from a distance, instantly recognizable, even bundled in a camel-colored coat I'd never seen before. She walked with purpose, head high, looking neither left nor right, pure Olivia, moving through the world as if it had been created specifically for her passage. As she approached, I noticed details I'd missed at first glance: the redness around her eyes, the tension in her shoulders, the absence of her usual perfect makeup. She looked diminished somehow. "You came," she said, stopping a few feet from my bench, as if uncertain whether to sit. "I said I would." I gestured to the empty space beside me. "You wanted to talk. So, talk." She sat, maintaining careful distance between us. For a long moment she just stared at the fountain, watching water cascade in glittering streams. "The wedding's been postponed indefinitely," she finally said. "Bradley's parents think we should wait until the legal situation is resolved." There was no hiding the bitterness in her voice. I didn't respond, unwilling to offer sympathy for a consequence so directly tied to her actions. "Mom hasn't stopped crying," she continued. "Dad barely speaks. They're terrified of what people are saying." "And what are people saying?" I asked, unable to keep a hint of satisfaction from my tone. She glanced at me, a flash of the old Olivia in her eyes. Defensive, superior. "What do you think? That they stole from their own daughter? That they're horrible parents? That they favored me so blatantly they were willing to sacrifice your future for my wedding?" "All true," I noted quietly. Her gaze dropped to her hands, knuckles white where they gripped each other in her lap. "Is it? All of it? Because I keep thinking about all the times they helped me, supported me, celebrated me, and wondering if every single one of those moments came at your expense." The admission caught me off guard. This wasn't the conversation I'd been expecting: recriminations, guilt trips, demands that I drop the lawsuit for the sake of family. Peace. Not this quiet questioning of the family narrative. "Not every moment," I conceded, surprising myself with the honesty. "But enough of them." She nodded slowly. "I saw the trust document. Dad showed it to me after everything fell apart at the wedding. He said it was just a formality, that Grandma and Grandpa never meant for it to be so rigid, that families should be able to make decisions together about things like that." "Did you believe him?" A humorless laugh escaped her. "I wanted to. It was easier than admitting I've been living off your sacrifices my entire life." She finally turned to face me fully, and I was startled to see tears in her eyes. "But then I saw your head. The cut. Dad said you fell, but Bradley thinks—" "It doesn't matter what Bradley thinks," I interrupted sharply. "Did he hurt you, Jess?" The question was barely above a whisper. I touched the scab reflexively. "Not on purpose." "That's not what I asked." "Why do you suddenly care?" The words came out harsher than I'd intended. "You've watched them dismiss me, forget me, prioritize you for years. Why is this time different?" She flinched as if I'd struck her. Because this time there's proof. Because this time I can't pretend it's all in your head. Because this time someone got hurt. I've been hurt for years, Olivia. The bluntness of my statement hung in the air between us. A jogger passed by, breath clouding in the cool air. The old man with the pigeons had disappeared, leaving only scattered breadcrumbs on the pavement. I know, she finally said. I think I've always known. I just didn't want to see it. Why not? She sighed, a sound so weary it seemed to come from somewhere deeper than her lungs. Because seeing it would mean accepting that everything I had, every advantage, every celebration, every damn dress and dessert, came with a cost. And that cost was you. She wiped at her eyes angrily. It was easier to believe I was just naturally the favorite, that I deserved it all. The admission was more than I'd ever expected from my sister. It should have felt like victory, this acknowledgement of what I'd always known. Instead, it felt hollow, like finding out you've won a game no one should have been playing in the first place. What do you want from me, Olivia? I asked tiredly. Forgiveness? Absolution? For me to drop the lawsuit so you can have your perfect wedding after all? No. She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a folded document. I want to give you this. I took it cautiously, unfolding what appeared to be a certified check. When I saw the amount, $52,000, I nearly dropped it. What is this? My wedding fund, she said simply, or what's left of it after the non-refundable deposits. I stared at her in disbelief. You're giving me your wedding money? I'm giving you back what was taken from you. She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear nervously. It won't cover everything. The trust would have grown with interest over the years. But it's a start. Does Bradley know you're doing this? It was his idea. After you turned down his offer, he suggested I be the one to make it right. A sad smile flickered across her face. He's a better person than I gave him credit for. I looked down at the check in my hands, emotions warring within me. The practical part of me recognized what this money could mean. A return to Westview, perhaps as soon as the spring semester. But another part, the part that had filed the lawsuit, that had stood up in front of my family and demanded justice, balked at the easy solution. This doesn't fix everything, I said, not meeting her eyes. I know. The trust existed. What they did was wrong, illegal. I know that too. I finally looked up at her. Then why are you really doing this? Why now? Olivia's expression shifted, vulnerability replacing her usual confident mask. Because when I saw that cut on your head, I realized where this path leads if we keep going. More hurt, more damage, until there's nothing left of us as a family. Maybe there never was much to begin with, I said quietly. She didn't argue, which itself was telling. Instead, she asked, What do you want, Jess? Really want? Beyond the money? Beyond making them admit what they did? The question caught me off guard. No one had asked what I wanted in so long. I'd been too busy fighting for what I needed, what I was owed. I want to matter, I finally said, the words emerging raw and unfiltered. I want them to see me, all of me, not as your shadow or your competition or a problem to solve. Just me. Olivia nodded slowly. I can't make them see you, but I see you now. She gestured to the check. And that's a beginning. I folded the check carefully and slid it into my pocket, still uncertain. What happens next? With the lawsuit? With Mom and Dad? That's up to you, she said. But whatever you decide, I won't stand in your way anymore. I won't let them make me their shield or their excuse. As we sat there in the cold park, an understanding passed between us, fragile and new, like thin ice forming over troubled waters. Not forgiveness, exactly. Not reconciliation. but something like recognition. For the first time, we were seeing each other clearly, without the distorting lens of our parents' favoritism. "I should go," she said eventually, standing and adjusting her coat. "Bradley's waiting. We're going to visit his aunt in Connecticut for a few days. Get away from everything." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. She hesitated, then added, "You could text me, though. Let me know what you decide about the check, about everything." "I will," I promised, surprising myself with the sincerity of it. As I watched her walk away, her figure growing smaller against the winter bare trees, I felt something shift inside me. Not healing. That would take far more than one conversation. But perhaps the first suture in a wound that had been left, open too long. That evening, I spread everything out on my tiny desk. The check from Olivia, my grandmother's journals, the legal paperwork Marcus had prepared. 3 paths forward, each with its own consequences. I could accept Olivia's money, drop the lawsuit, and attempt to rebuild some semblance of family from the ashes. I could refuse the money, proceed with the legal case, and potentially win more in damages while severing family ties completely. Or I could find some middle path, one that acknowledged both justice and mercy. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. "Checking in. How did it go with your sister?" I stared at the message, fingers hovering over the keyboard. How could I explain the complex tangle of emotions the meeting had left me with? The strange sense that, for the first time in my life, Olivia had actually seen me as a person rather than competition? "Better than expected," I finally replied. "She gave me a check for $52,000. What's left of the wedding fund?" His response came quickly. "That changes things legally. Do you want to accept it?" Did I? The question echoed in my mind as I picked up the check again, running my thumb over the signature. Olivia's usually perfect handwriting slightly shaky, as if her hand had trembled while writing it. Before I could respond, another text came through, this one from Professor Taylor. "Heard from Marcus about your sister's offer. Whatever you decide, I want you to know Westview will hold your spot for spring semester. I spoke with the admissions committee today." Tears pricked at my eyes. In all the chaos, I'd almost forgotten what this had been about in the first place. Not just money or family justice, but my education, my future, the dreams I'd been working toward before they were derailed. I called Marcus, needing to hear a human voice rather than exchanging texts. "I want to accept the money," I said when he answered, "but I don't want to drop the lawsuit entirely." "Those might be mutually exclusive demands, Jess," he cautioned. "Your parents will almost certainly want a full release of claims in exchange for any settlement." "The money isn't from them," I pointed out. "It's from Olivia, and I'm not looking to punish them anymore. I just want—" I trailed off, struggling to articulate what I was seeking. "You want acknowledgement," Marcus supplied softly. "Recognition of what was done to you." "Yes." The simple word carried the weight of years of being overlooked, undermined, devalued. "We could propose a structured settlement," he suggested, after a moment. "They acknowledge the existence and terms of the trust, agree to provide the remaining funds over time, and include a formal apology." Would they agree to that? Only one way to find out. The following morning, I deposited Olivia's check, the teller raising an eyebrow at the amount but asking no questions. Then I headed to community college for my business law class. Professor Taylor was waiting outside the classroom, her usual composed self except for the excited gleam in her eyes. "Have you decided?" she asked without preamble. "I'm accepting the money," I told her, "but continuing with a modified version of the lawsuit. I want them to acknowledge what they did." She nodded approvingly. "And Westview? They'll still have me in the spring. They will." She squeezed my arm gently. I made sure of it. For the first time in months, I felt the tight knot in my chest begin to loosen. Not dissolving completely, there was still too much unresolved for that, but enough to let me breathe more freely. After class, I walked to the small park near campus, needing space to think. My phone buzzed with a text from my father. "We need to talk. All of us, please." I stared at the message, the first direct communication since our confrontation at the house. My instinct was to ignore it, to maintain the protective distance I'd established. But Olivia's words from the park echoed in my mind. I realized where this path leads if we keep going. More hurt, more damage, until there's nothing left of us as a family. Was there anything left worth saving? I wasn't sure. But I was beginning to realize that closure might require one more conversation, one where I wasn't running away or being silenced. "When and where?" I texted back. His response came immediately. "Tomorrow, 3 p.m., neutral ground, the counselor's office." Counselor? That was unexpected. I typed, "What counselor?" "Family therapist, someone who can help us talk to each other without more damage being done." I considered this a neutral third party, a structured environment, perhaps the only way we could have any kind of productive conversation at this point. "I'll be there," I replied. "Send me the address." Then I called Marcus. "My parents want to meet with a family therapist tomorrow, all of us. Do you want me there?" I thought about it. "No, this isn't about the legal case. It's about everything else." "Are you sure that's wise?" "No," I admitted, "but I think it's necessary." That night, I slept fitfully, dreams filled with fragments of the past. Childhood disappointments, teenage resentments, recent confrontations. I woke before dawn, a strange calm settling over me. Whatever happened at this meeting, I would face it as the person I was becoming, not the invisible daughter I had been. The therapist's office was in a converted Victorian house on the edge of downtown, with a discreet brass plaque beside the door reading, "Dr. Eleanor Winters, Family Counseling." I arrived 10 minutes early, my stomach in knots despite my resolution to remain composed. The waiting room was empty except for a middle-aged woman with silver-streaked hair and kind eyes. "Jessica?" she asked, rising from her chair. "I'm Dr. Winters. Your parents aren't here yet, but they called to say they're on their way. Would you like to come in and get settled first?" I nodded, following her into a warmly lit office with comfortable chairs arranged in a loose circle. No couch, no desk barrier, just an open space designed for conversation. "Your father mentioned some of what's been happening," she said as I chose a chair near the window. "But I'd like to hear your perspective before they arrive." "How much time do you have?" I asked with a hint of bitter humor. She smiled gently. "As much as you need." So I told her, not everything, but the essential parts. The college fund turned wedding fund, the discovery of the trust, the confrontation at the wedding, the physical altercation at the house. Olivia's unexpected olive branch. Dr. Winters listened without interruption, occasionally making notes but mostly maintaining eye contact, her expression attentive and non-judgmental. "That's quite a journey," she said when I finished. "And a significant act of bravery, standing up for yourself the way you have." Before I could respond, the waiting room door opened. Voices drifted in, my parents arriving together. My pulse quickened, the calm I'd cultivated threatening to desert me. Dr. Winters must have noticed my tension. "Remember," she said quietly, "you've already done the hardest part. You've spoken your truth. Now you just need to stand in it." The door opened and my parents entered. Mom looked smaller somehow, her usually perfect appearance slightly disheveled. Dad's face was haggard, with dark circles under his eyes. When he saw me, his gaze immediately went to my temple, to the visible evidence of our last encounter. "Jessica," he said, his voice rough with emotion I couldn't immediately identify. "Thank you for coming." I nodded, but didn't speak, not trusting. my voice yet. Dr. Winters gestured to the remaining chairs. Please, have a seat. We have important things to discuss today. As my parents settled across from me, I felt the weight of history pressing down. Years of imbalance, of inequality, of quiet desperation. But alongside it, for the first time, I felt something else. The strength of knowing exactly who I was and what I deserved. Whatever happened next, I would face it standing firmly in that truth. Dr. Winters took a deep breath and centered herself in her chair. Before we begin, I want to establish some ground rules. Each person will have uninterrupted time to speak. We will practice active listening, no defending, no interrupting. This is a space for truth, even difficult truth. Does everyone agree to these terms? My parents nodded. I did too, though skepticism must have shown on my face. Good, she continued. Robert, Karen, since Jessica has already shared her perspective with me, I'd like one of you to begin. Tell us what brought you here today. My father cleared his throat, eyes fixed on his clasped hands. He faltered, then tried. Again. We made a terrible mistake. With the trust fund, with how we've treated Jessica, with everything. The admission hung in the air between us, simple words that I had waited years to hear. And how does that mistake make you feel now? Dr. Winters prompted. Dad's face contorted with an emotion I rarely saw there. Shame. Ashamed. Terrified. Like I've failed at the most important job I ever had. Mom was silently crying now, tears, tracking mascara down her cheeks. Karen? Dr. Winters turned to her. Would you like to add anything? I didn't see it, Mom whispered. I didn't let myself see it. How we pushed her aside made her feel less than. And then, when she finally stood up for herself. She shook her head, unable to continue. When she finally stood up for herself, how did that make you feel? Dr. Winters completed the thought as a question. Defensive at first, Mom admitted. Angry, humiliated. But then, she looked at me directly for the first time, her eyes, red-rimmed but clear. Then I started to really think about everything, about the trust, about all the times we'd chosen Olivia's wants over Jessica's needs, about what kind of mother does that to her child. I hadn't expected this raw honesty, this apparent self-reflection. Part of me waited for the qualifier, the justification that would follow. The but that would negate everything they were saying. It didn't come. Jessica, Dr. Winters turned to me. What are you feeling as you hear your parents speak? I took a deep breath, forcing myself to be present rather than retreating behind the wall I'd built over years. Confused, I finally said. This doesn't sound like the parents I know. Dad flinched. Mom's tears flowed faster. What would the parents you know have said? Dr. Winters asked. That I was being dramatic. That family means sacrifice. That Olivia needed it more. I met my father's gaze steadily. That it was their money to use however they wanted, regardless of what Grandma and Grandpa intended. He nodded slowly, acceptance rather than denial. You're right. That's exactly what we would have said. What we did say. What changed? I asked, the question that had been burning inside me since I'd received their text. Dr. Winters nodded encouragingly, letting us navigate this moment. Without her guidance. Several things, Dad said quietly. Bradley came to see us after meeting with you. He was direct about what he thought of our actions, about the legal reality of the trust. And Olivia told us she'd given you the remainder of the wedding fund, Mom added. She said she'd never seen things clearly until now, how we'd always favored her, how we'd justified taking what was legally yours. But the real breaking point, Dad continued, his voice thickening, was seeing what I'd done to you, the cut on your head, the fear in your eyes when I grabbed you. I saw myself through your eyes in that moment, and I didn't recognize the man I'd become. My throat tightened. I looked away, out the window where late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the parking lot. We've been talking with Dr. Winters for several days now, Mom said, trying to understand how we got here, how we could have convinced ourselves that what we were doing was acceptable. And what did you conclude? I asked, still not looking at them. That we failed you, Dad said simply. Not just with the college fund, but in 1,000 small ways over years. That we prioritized Olivia because she was louder, more demanding, and because she reflected what we wanted to see in ourselves. And you, Mom added softly, you were always so self-sufficient, so quiet. It was easy to tell ourselves you were fine, that you didn't need as much, when the truth was, we just weren't giving you what you deserved. The words pierced something in me, a recognition of a pattern so ingrained I'd stopped seeing it clearly myself. My self-sufficiency hadn't been an innate trait. It had been a survival strategy in a family where demanding attention was the only way to receive it. What do you want now? I asked, finally turning back to face them. A clean slate? Forgiveness? For me to drop the lawsuit and come home like nothing happened? Dr. Winters leaned forward slightly. Perhaps we should focus on what each of you needs moving forward, rather than jumping to solutions. Dad nodded. What I want, what we want, is a chance to make amends. Not to erase what happened, but to acknowledge it and do better. He swallowed hard. We've been talking to a financial advisor about restructuring our retirement accounts, taking out a home equity loan, to restore your trust fund, all of it with interest. I blinked in surprise. You'd do that? We should have done it years ago, Mom said, instead of trying to justify the unjustifiable. And the lawsuit? I pressed. We won't contest it, Dad said firmly. Whatever the court decides is appropriate, we'll accept. Dr. Winters turned to me. Jessica, what do you need from your parents? Not just financially, but emotionally? The question caught me off guard. I'd been so focused on the legal battle, on reclaiming what was tangibly mine, that I hadn't fully articulated my deeper needs. I need. My voice faltered. I started, again. I need you to see me. Really see me. Not as Olivia's shadow or the easy child, but as a person with my own dreams and needs. I took a shaky breath. I need you to understand that what you did wasn't just financially wrong. It made me feel worthless, like my future mattered less than Olivia's perfect day. We understand that now, Mom said, her voice breaking. And we are so sorry. I don't know if I can forgive you yet, I admitted. I don't even know what our relationship looks like going forward. That's perfectly valid, Dr. Winters assured me. Reconciliation isn't an event, it's a process, and it begins with honesty, which you're all demonstrating today. Dad leaned forward slightly. Jessica, whatever you decide about the lawsuit, about our family relationship, we support it. If you need space, time, distance, we understand. We just want you to know that whenever or if ever you're ready, we'll be here. And we'll do the work needed to earn back your trust. The sincerity in his voice was disarming. This wasn't the defensive father who had grabbed my wrist and inadvertently caused me to hit my head. This was someone new, or perhaps someone old, someone I dimly remembered from early childhood before the family dynamics had calcified into their painful patterns. I need time, I said finally, to think, to process everything. Of course, Mom nodded quickly. Take all the time you need. Dr. Winters glanced at her notes. I think this is a good place to pause. You've all done difficult, important work today. She turned to me. Jessica, would you be open to another session in the future? I considered this. Maybe, I don't know yet. That's fine, she assured me. There's no pressure or timeline here. As the session wrapped up, an awkward moment arose when we all stood to leave. In normal circumstances, there might have been hugs or at least handshakes, but we were far from normal circumstances. We hovered uncertainly until Dr. Winters smoothly guided my parents to review some paperwork with her, giving me the opportunity to leave first. Outside, the late afternoon air felt cool against my flushed skin. I walked to my car on unsteady legs, overwhelmed by the emotional intensity of the past hour. As I reached for my door handle, I heard footsteps behind me. "Jess, wait." I turned, to see my father standing a respectful distance away, hands shoved in his pockets like a nervous teenager. "I want to give you something," he said, pulling an envelope from his jacket. "It's not much, but it's a start." I took it cautiously. Inside was a cashier's check for $15,000 and a handwritten note. "It's what we could pull together immediately," he explained as I stared at the check. "The rest will come, I promise." The note simply read, "This doesn't undo the past, but I hope it helps build your future. With love and deepest regret, Dad." "Thank you," I said, unsure what else to say. He nodded, not moving closer, respecting the invisible boundary between us. "One more thing. I've spoken with the Westview Financial Aid Office. They're holding your spot for spring semester, and I've arranged to make the required initial payment directly to them this week." My eyes widened. "You've been in touch with Westview." "After Olivia told us she'd given you the wedding fund money, I called them to see if it would be enough for you to return." A sad smile crossed his face. "They remembered you, Jess. Said you were one of the most promising applicants they'd had." That knowledge, that I'd been remembered, valued by the institution, that had been forced to rescind my acceptance, sent a warm current through my chest. "Thank you," I said again, meaning it more this time. "You don't need to thank me for doing what I should have done all along." He hesitated, then added, "I'll let you go now. But please know, your mother and I were here when you're ready, if you're ever ready." I nodded, unable to commit to more than that acknowledgement. He seemed to understand, giving me a final nod before walking back toward the building where Mom was presumably still inside. The drive back to my apartment was a blur, my mind racing with everything that had happened. The check from Dad weighed heavily in my purse, alongside Olivia's much larger one already deposited. The financial piece was coming together, but the emotional landscape remained uncertain terrain. When I arrived home, I found Marcus sitting on the steps of my building, a folder in his hands. "How did it go?" he asked, standing as I approached. "Surprisingly productive," I admitted, unlocking the door and gesturing for him to follow me inside. "They admitted everything. No excuses this time. They're not contesting the lawsuit, and my dad gave me this." I handed him the check. Marcus whistled softly. "That's significant, especially combined with your sister's money. They say there's more coming, that they're taking out loans to repay the full amount with interest." He studied my face. "You don't seem as happy about this as I expected." I sank onto my bed, suddenly exhausted. I don't know what I feel, to be honest. It's like I've been fighting so hard for so long, and now they're just surrendering. "Isn't that what you wanted?" "I wanted justice," I said slowly. "But I think I also wanted them to understand what they did to me. Not just legally, but emotionally." I looked up at him. "And now they say they do understand, and they're sorry, and they want to make amends. And I don't know if I believe them, or if I can forgive them even if I do believe them." Marcus set his folder down on my desk and sat in my single chair. "You don't have to decide any of that right now. Legally, we're in a strong position. They're acknowledging the wrongdoing and showing willingness to make restitution. That's all we need for now. What's in the folder? I asked, nodding toward it. Settlement documents. I drafted them after you told me about your sister's offer and before I knew about today's meeting. He shrugged. We can revise them based on this new development. I leaned back against the wall, feeling the last few weeks catch up with me in a wave of exhaustion. Can we talk about it tomorrow? I think I need to process everything first. Of course. He stood, gathering his things. Get some rest, Jess. You've accomplished more than most people would have dared to attempt. After he left, I sat in the growing darkness of my apartment, too drained to turn on a light. My phone buzzed with a text from Olivia. How did it go with Mom and Dad? Better than expected, I replied. Did you know they were seeing a therapist? No, that's unexpected. Good unexpected, though. I stared at her message, a thought forming. Did you talk to them after our meeting in the park? The typing dots appeared, disappeared, then reappeared. Yes. I told them I'd given you the wedding money, that I finally understood what they'd done to you, that I couldn't be part of it anymore. Thank you, I texted back, surprised by how much I meant it. Don't thank me. I should have stood up for you years ago. Another pause, then. Bradley and I have been talking about family, patterns, about what kind of family we want to build someday. I don't want our kids to ever feel like you felt. The mention of future nieces or nephews I might have, if Olivia and I maintained a relationship, if she and Bradley eventually married, caught me off guard. It was the first time I'd thought beyond the immediate conflict to what our family might look like in years to come. That means a lot, I replied simply. Get some rest, she wrote. We can talk more later, when you're ready. When you're ready. The same phrase my parents had used, all of them giving me space, time, the power to decide what happened next. After years of feeling powerless in my own family, the shift was dizzying. I crawled under my covers without bothering to change, physically and emotionally spent. Sleep came surprisingly quickly, deep and dreamless. The next morning, I woke to sunshine streaming through my window and a clarity I hadn't felt in months. I knew what I needed to do. I called Marcus first. I want to settle the lawsuit, I told him, without preamble, but with conditions. What kind of conditions? He asked, fully alert despite the early hour. A formal acknowledgement of what they did, repayment of the full trust amount with interest, and a binding agreement about how family finances will be handled going forward, for both Olivia and me. That's actually fairly close to what I drafted, he said, sounding pleased. Anything else? I thought about Dr. Winter's office, about the painful honesty that had filled that space. Yes, I want them to continue family therapy, all of us, including Olivia, at least monthly for a year. That's not a standard legal settlement term, Marcus said cautiously. I know, but it's important to me. More important than the money, honestly. I'll add it to the draft. We can present it to them as a good faith negotiation. My next call was to Professor Taylor, who answered on the first ring. I've accepted my parents' offer to pay for Westview, I told her. They're contacting the financial aid office this week. That's wonderful news, she said warmly. The spring semester doesn't start until January, but we could get you registered for classes now. Secure your spot in the required courses. I'd like that, I said, feeling a flutter of excitement for the first time in months, excitement about my future, about possibilities opening up again. Come by my office this afternoon, she suggested. We'll look at the course catalog together. After hanging up, I sat with my laptop, pulling up the Westview website. The familiar images of brick buildings and tree-lined walkways, images I'd once thought lost to me, filled me with a bittersweet hope. I might actually walk those paths next semester, sit in those classrooms, build the future I'd worked so hard for. My phone rang. An unknown number. I answered cautiously. Jessica Wilson? A woman's voice asked. This is Audrey Martinez from the Westview University Financial Aid Office. I'm calling because we've received a significant payment toward your account from Robert Wilson. Are you planning to join us for the spring semester? The formal confirmation sent a shiver of reality through me. This was actually happening. Yes, I said, my voice stronger than I expected. Yes, I am. Wonderful. We'll need you to come in to complete some paperwork. When would be convenient? We set an appointment for the following week. As I hung up, I caught sight of myself in the small mirror above my desk. The cut on my temple was healing, just a faint pink line now. But the person reflected back at me looked different in more profound ways, steadier, more certain. Someone who had fought for herself and won. My phone buzzed with another text from Olivia. Mom just called, said you're settling the lawsuit, that you want family therapy for all of us? Yes to both, I confirmed. If you're willing to participate. I am. It's time we all did the work to fix what's broken between us. I stared at her message, marveling at how much had changed in such a short time. The sister who had once benefited from our parents' favoritism was now advocating for a more balanced family dynamic. The parents who had dismissed my needs were now actively working to make amends. And I, the quiet daughter, the afterthought, had found my voice. Had used it not just to demand justice, but to chart a path toward healing. None of it erased the past. The years of feeling invisible, the betrayal of the stolen college fund, the confrontation that had left me physically injured. Those experiences had shaped me irrevocably, but perhaps they had also given me a strength I might not have found otherwise. I closed my laptop and stood, suddenly restless with energy. The day was bright, possibilities expanding before me like an open road. For the first time in longer than I could remember, I felt like I was moving forward rather than simply surviving. My future, the one that had been temporarily stolen, was mine again, and I intended to claim every moment of it. 6 months later, I stood in my dorm room at Westview University, pinning the last photo to my corkboard, a snapshot from graduation day at community college. Professor Taylor stood beside me in the picture, beaming with pride. I'd completed my associate's degree before transferring to Westview, refusing to leave anything unfinished. The spring semester had been everything I'd hoped for, challenging classes that pushed me intellectually, professors who knew my name and valued my contributions, a campus that felt like it had been waiting for me all along. I'd even made friends, real, ones who knew my story and admired my courage rather than pitying me for my family drama. A knock at my door interrupted my thoughts. "It's open," I called. Olivia stepped in, carrying a small houseplant and a wrapped package. "Dorm-warming gift," she said with a tentative smile. "Though I'm a little late since you've been here for months." "Better late than never," I replied, accepting both offerings. The plant was a resilient pothos, perfect for a forgetful college student. The package contained a framed photo I'd never seen before. My grandmother holding me as a baby, her expression one of pure adoration. "Found it in Mom's old albums," Olivia explained. "Thought you should have it." I traced my grandmother's face through the glass. "Thank you. This means a lot." Olivia glanced around my room, taking in the modest but comfortable space. "So, this is Westview. Finally." "Finally," I agreed. Our relationship had undergone its own transformation over the past months. Not best friends, not completely healed, but something new and authentic was growing between us. Monthly family therapy sessions had revealed patterns neither of us had fully recognized. How our parents had subtly encouraged competition rather than connection, how we'd both been shaped by their expectations in different but equally damaging ways. "Are you nervous about dinner tonight?" she asked, perching on the edge of my desk. "A little," I admitted. Tonight would be the first time all four of us met outside the therapist's office. A dinner at a neutral restaurant, carefully planned, by Dr. Winters as the next step in our family reconciliation process. "Dad's definitely nervous," Olivia offered. "Changed his shirt 3 times before I left." I smiled at the image. My father, once so certain of his authority, now anxious about a dinner with his younger daughter. The power dynamics in our family had shifted irreversibly. "The final payment cleared yesterday," I said, changing the subject. "The trust is fully restored." My parents had kept their word, making regular payments until the educational trust was completely replenished, with interest. The legal settlement I'd insisted on had made the arrangement binding, but they'd never missed a payment, or complained about the terms. "They're trying, Jess," Olivia said softly. "Really trying." I know. And I did know. I'd seen the effort over these months, the careful respect for my boundaries, the genuine attempts to understand the damage they'd done, the slow, painful reconstruction of trust. Dr. Winters had been right about reconciliation being a process, rather than an event. We were still in that process, with no guarantee of where it might end. "Bradley and I set the date," Olivia said, twisting her engagement ring. "Next June, small ceremony, nothing extravagant." After postponing the wedding indefinitely, they'd taken time to reevaluate their relationship and priorities. The new plan reflected that growth, a celebration focused on their commitment rather than impressing the Scotts or anyone else. "I'm glad," I said sincerely. "We want you there, of course, but only if you're comfortable." 6 months ago, such consideration for my feelings would have been unimaginable from Olivia. Now it came naturally to her. "I'd like to be there," I assured. She nodded, visibly relieved. "We should head out soon, reservations at 7. As we walked across campus toward the parking lot, spring twilight settling around us, Olivia asked, "Do you ever think about how differently things might have turned out if you hadn't found those trust documents?" I considered this, watching. Students sprawled on the quad, enjoying the mild evening. Sometimes, I might never have stood up for myself, might have accepted that my future mattered less than yours, and I might never have seen the truth about our family, about myself. She shook her head. "It's strange to be grateful for something that caused so much pain." "The pain was already there," I pointed out. "It just hadn't been acknowledged." We reached her car in companionable silence. As she drove toward the restaurant, I thought about the journey of these past months, the confrontations, the tears, the slow rebuilding of what had been broken. None of it had been easy. Some days I still struggled with forgiveness, with trusting that the changes in my family were genuine and lasting, but other changes were undeniable. I had found my voice and learned to use it. I had discovered strengths I never knew I possessed. I had built a support system beyond my family. Professor Taylor, Marcus, new friends at Westview who accepted me for exactly who I was. The restaurant came into view, a cozy Italian place with warm lighting spilling from its windows. I could see my parents already inside, sitting stiffly at a corner table, both checking their watches nervously. "Ready?" Olivia asked as she parked. "As I'll ever be," I replied. We walked in together, side by side rather than one in the other's shadow. Mom spotted us first, nudging Dad, who stood immediately, his face lighting up with tentative hope. "Jessica," he said as we reached the table. "Olivia, thank you for coming." The formality in his tone reflected our new reality. No assumption of closeness, no taking for granted that I would show up simply because they were my parents. Everything now had to be earned, rebuilt from the foundation up. "You look well," Mom said, clearly restraining herself from the hug she might once have given without thought. The campus agrees with you. It does, I confirmed, sliding into my seat. My literature professor recommended me for a summer research position. I'll be staying on campus through August. That's wonderful, Dad said, genuine pride in his voice. We'd love to hear about it. If you want to share, of course. The qualifier, that acknowledgement of my right to choose what I shared and with whom, was another small marker of how far we'd come. As we ordered drinks and studied menus, I observed my family with clear eyes. Not perfect, still learning. Still making mistakes and corrections. But trying, truly trying, to create something healthier than what we'd had before. I didn't know if we would ever fully heal the wounds of the past. Some scars would likely remain, reminders of painful lessons learned. But sitting there in that warm restaurant, I realized that healing and perfection were not the same thing. My future stretched before me now, unobstructed by the barriers that had once seemed insurmountable. A future I had fought for, one class, action at a time, one confrontation at a time, one difficult conversation at a time. It was mine again. And whatever happened with my family going forward, that victory could never be taken away. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories, right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.